A massive thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership so you can explore your creativity. In case you haven't noticed, I've had the games of 2013 on my mind a lot lately. Such a seemingly important year for the medium as it was, with several significant cinematic AAA releases, proving that games are just like any other art form or something. And on some level, it would seem like time has borne out 2013's importance. In particular, GTA 5's continued success is beyond anyone's wildest imaginations. It's not just one of the biggest games ever, it's one of the biggest entertainment products, period. Its absolute cultural dominance perfectly highlighted by the fact that it opened up the PS5 reveal. In Sony's own words, this now 7-year-old title is the future of gaming. It's important to remember though that GTA 5 achieved a great deal of this success before its monumental online mode was introduced. Rockstar had built up a pedigree by 2013 of celebrating the excess of their open worlds by packing them with these truly massive stories guiding you through it, sparing no expense bringing in top-tier Hollywood talent to flesh them out, with GTA 5 set to be the most ambitious of the bunch. And yet, while I do still enjoy diving into that world every so often to mess around, I'm not convinced GTA 5's narrative really makes good on that potential. Like other GTA games, it is full of searing satire and jokes, but to me 5 in particular stands out for just how messy and inconsistent it is. Things constantly just happen for seemingly no reason, culminating in a confused plot with a bunch of pretty nothingy characters and one of the least satisfying endings I've ever seen in a game. But I'm not here to tell you how shocked and appalled I am that the story of this 7-year-old goofy crime game isn't a masterpiece or whatever. Rather, that the reasons behind that brought up some thoughts about how we criticize games more generally. How terms and problems a lot of us have come to think of as pretty cut and dry are maybe more nuanced than we might think. Because all of this comes down to my belief that a lot of the narrative issues and inconsistencies on show here are caused or solidified by the game's focus on one of its most recognisable elements. The thing that, from a distance, seemed like it was specifically designed to solve the criticisms people laid at the feet of other GTA stories, inadvertently creating a whole bunch more issues in the process. The thing I'm talking about, and I know this is controversial but bear with me, is the character of Trevor Philips. But to explain why that is, we first have to go back to the GTA of old for a minute. Picture the scene, the year is 2008, you're stepping off a boat after a long journey to something resembling New York in pursuit of the American dream. All while, however, your personal demons eat away at you. You have to grapple with your urges to find those who sold you out, weighing up vengeance and falling back into your old ways against turning your back on the past and living a more peaceful life. And then you fire a rocket launcher at some civilians before hijacking a car without thinking and racing along the pavement. Such is the story of Niko Bellic in GTA 4, what many people have described as, and I can't believe I'm going to bring this up, a textbook case of ludonarrative dissonance, a term utilised far and wide since its coinage in 2007 to describe a situation in which the story the game is telling conflicts with the mechanics you actually engage with. It's BioShock's gameplay promoting objectivist self-interest, while its story forces you to assist Atlas. And as it turns out, it's Niko's more somber struggle to find peace clashing with the violent, off-the-wall, player-driven rampages that make GTA the series it is. If you've engaged with game criticism in a meaningful way in the last several years, you're likely sick to death of this term by now. Believe me, I am too. But my problem with the notion of ludonarrative dissonance has less to do with people trying to sound smart by using the big words. It's okay, I remember having my mind blown by this concept when I first heard it too, and more to do with its application, its use as a kind of gotcha tool, whereby almost any game that has seemingly conflicting narrative and mechanics will undoubtedly have people say, it's ludonarrative dissonance, this character is violent but you tried to make them likeable, that means the game is bad. Because whether deliberate or not, Rockstar ended up giving us the answer to this quote-unquote problem in the form of Trevor Philips. Described by one Adam Sessler as the greatest character in all of crime fiction, and forming one part of the game's trio of playable characters, Trevor is defined by his brutal brutally violent psychopathy, his penchant for flying off the handle at any given moment, and his utter disregard for any form of consequences. He pays less than zero heed to any societal norms, he spits in the face of taboo. The game goes as far as to insinuate that he may be a cannibal. In other words, and in stark contrast to the more understated Niko Bellic, Trevor embodies exactly the way you'd imagine most typical players approach a GTA title, making the most of their freedom relative to other games as they ditch the main plot to go on a kill-crazy rampage at the drop of a hat. Hooray, problem solved. We no longer have the issue of story not lining up with gameplay because we have a character exactly as unhinged as the player. What's more, in the game's obvious pastiche of Heat, Trevor fits remarkably well into the role of Waingro, the weird serial killer dude and the spectre hanging over both Hannah and Macaulay for different reasons. So creepy because there is no reading him, no predicting what he'll do next. But with all of that in mind, there's a reason Waingro is the antagonist of Heat. In terms of the drama on screen, he's the chaotic force in the background that makes things unnecessarily difficult for everyone involved. He's not the guy you root for. And I'm not questioning this decision on Rockstar's part from a likability perspective. You know, a character doesn't need to be likable to be compelling. But by placing such an inherently uncontrollable character at the center of your narrative, that narrative itself becomes harder to control. How do you in any way ground a story that hinges on a character whose loose motivations can shift entirely in a matter of seconds? The answer, according to GTA 5, is that you don't. The inconsistency fundamental to Trevor's character seems to bear itself out in the trajectory of the wider plot, where you initially have a simple story of the former bank thief unsatisfied with life on the straight and narrow, suddenly finding himself living vicariously through his attentive pupil, only for Trevor to show up and things turn into Michael pursuing a career as a film producer, a bunch of one last missions for the FIB to keep things under wraps, and at least one of the few story heists the game has to offer going nowhere thanks to Trevor not thinking it through. What's more, Trevor finds out Michael has been lying about their dead friend Brad the whole time and doesn't kill him immediately for some reason, but also wants him dead, but then saves him, but only because he wants to be the one to kill him, but then he doesn't do that, but he also still hates Michael, I guess? It's wild. There are so many moments like this in Trevor's story where I thought to myself, why are you brutally slaughtering these people that have done nothing, but not these people that have consistently and aggressively wronged you and represent everything you hate about the world? It's not a question of morality, but rather dramatic consistency, whether a character that unhinged makes sense as the one we're meant to control for ostensibly a third of this huge game. Because, like I say, Trevor does not care one jot about consequences. This is exemplified when the actual last job the crew pull off is rendered wholly anticlimactic, seeing as the game now has all these loose ends the writers just forgot about, I guess, and subsequently, depending on what ending you choose, have you picking them all off in one fell swoop anyway. I, as the player, thought about doing that before all this. I imagined Trevor would too. So why didn't he? By solving the supposed problem of dissonance in one game, by creating a character more in line with player actions, the character of Trevor Philips ends up creating all these other dramatic problems for the writers. And I say supposed because, you know what? After all this, revisiting GTA 4, its story is fine. Turns out it's not impossible to suspend your disbelief while playing an open world crime game. That it doesn't really matter all that much that Niko's story is one of personal redemption and coming to terms with his past, while you also control him jumping off of buildings onto the unsuspecting plebs below. Arguably the series' trademark satire actually ends up working better, with Niko often being framed as the understated straight man in these comedic pairings. It allows the complete and utter absurdity of this world and its denizens to happen to him, highlighting how ridiculous and hypocritical it all is from a neutral perspective, at least in the cutscenes. And this is an absurdity that becomes somewhat muted when the person you control consistently out-weirds all these other characters and the world in which they live. Okay, haha, Facebook is funny, but this guy's over here eating people. And don't get me wrong here, I think that making your mechanics thematically consistent with your story is perhaps the thing that defines games as their own medium. It can make for some of the most transcendent experiences I think you can have with art. That said, what becomes clear with cases like Grand Theft Auto is that ludonarrative dissonance is not the end of the critical conversation as it can sometimes seem. Hell, take a series like Yakuza, with its violent clashing of an often deeply melodramatic story and bicycle slamming mayhem, creating a world in which more tender tender human moments can be as explosive and fun as any violence you inflict. If this series has taught us anything, it's that dissonance can sometimes be a good thing. And again, I'm not saying that Trevor Philips was somehow deliberately envisioned by Rockstar to be a remedy to the supposed dissonance of Niko Bellic's journey, or that I'm even particularly bothered about this myself 7 years after the fact. I'm just saying that the contrast between the two games provides an intriguing case study of a concept that has become such a hallmark of games criticism over the years. That if the solution to your problem is Trevor Philips, then maybe some tonal inconsistencies here and there are nowhere near as much of a problem as we might have once thought. And speaking of the solution to all your problems, let me take a moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creative and curious people, where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity with Skillshare's inspiring online classes, on topics including illustration, photography, video, design, and more. Are you exhausted from the tonal whiplash of inconsistent character motivations? Then why not take a moment to relax and brush up on your artistic skills with Learn How to Draw, a mindset, method, and exercise, with illustrator Yuko Shimizu. A really nice class that does away with academic approaches to drawing in favour of practical exercises designed to inject a real sense of fun into the process. What's more, Skillshare offers classes designed for real life and all the circumstances that come with it. These lessons can help you stay inspired, express yourself, and introduce you to a community of millions, all for less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. And because Skillshare is sponsoring this video, the first 1,000 people who click my link in the description can get a 2-month free trial of premium membership, so there's no risk to checking it out for yourself, and you'll really be helping the channel in the process. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, and I hope you all enjoyed this piece on Grand Theft Auto. I'd like to sincerely thank my patrons here. Your continued support during this weird time is what allows me to keep making videos, and I can never thank you enough for that. If you feel like you can, and only if you feel like you can really help the channel continue, as well as get things like early access to ad-free video uploads by heading to patreon.com/writingongames and pledging only what you feel comfortable with. I'm immensely grateful for your support in whatever form it takes. Special thanks go to Mark B. Writing, Artyom Vitsyuk, Ruth Knapman, Leia Chinello, Konstantinos Sakinis, Henry Milek, Hebe Amori, Rob, Bryce Snyder, Tommy Carver-Chaplin, David Björk, Lucas, Dallas Keane, William Fielder, my dad, Timothy Jones, The Nameless Guy, Ham Migas, Samuel Pickens, Shardfire, Hannah Pimentel, Justin's Holderness, and Charlie Yang. And with that, this has been another episode of Writing on Games. Thank you very much for watching, stay safe, and I will see you all next time.